Hi everyone, I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's topic is the Book of Revelation as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yesterday I was tagged in the comments of a video by Nick Zay. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But it was a very interesting video, and I'm going to say that it's not something that I'm completely on board with. I will leave a link in the description in case you would want to watch it. But he did bring up some very interesting thoughts about the Book of Revelation that I have had from time to time. And his thoughts on the Book of Revelation are that it can be used as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And these things can be man-made. These signs, so to speak, these happenings of the Book of Revelation can be intentionally created in order to fulfill the book itself. Now, the reason that I disagree with him is because he believes that it was added to the Bible and that it was not written by John. And he believes that it was written by the controllers. That's my word. I don't specifically remember what word he used, but basically by those who are in control of us, those who are controlling the world. I don't agree with that, because if you actually read the Book of Revelation, you will see all of the threads that come out of that book and just go through the entire Bible seamlessly. And to me, it would take a genius to write something like the Book of Revelation and to have everything fit as perfectly as it does, which is why I'm not there with him on Revelation being added to the Bible at all. However, the idea of it being used as a self-fulfilling prophecy has certainly crossed my mind. So what is a self-fulfilling prophecy? A self-fulfilling prophecy occurs when a person's expectations of an event make the outcome more likely to occur than would otherwise have been true. Types of self-fulfilling prophecies: self-imposed prophecies and imposed prophecies by others. And that is really the one that I think of the most when it comes to the Book of Revelation being used in this way today. But there are certainly elements of the self-imposed prophecy that can happen as well. Now, let's not make any mistake about this. I firmly believe now that the Book of Revelation was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. And so I do believe that everything in the Book of Revelation culminated in AD 70. And I do believe that that is the original intent of Revelation. It was a book about the destruction of Jerusalem. However, I am starting to wonder, and these are just my thoughts, this isn't something that I can prove or anything like that. This is just kind of a thought process that I've been having, is there are people who may very well be using the Book of Revelation to, and I've said this in one of my other videos, to control the population, to control the populace, to get a large portion of the population, and that would be basically Christians. Specifically, I'm going to say evangelical Christians, and at this point, sometimes even Christian truthers, to help them along in their controlling of society by setting off certain events in order for, remember the Georgia Guidestones where they said the things that they had to do in order to control the populace? Well, I'm looking at some people as using the Book of Revelation to create events, to create signs that aren't natural, but that have been put in place in order for the Book of Revelation to actually happen. And this is by no means the first time. So Ecclesiastes 1, verses 9 to 11, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. As I read this, and as I read this recently, I thought to myself, especially verse 11, That certainly sounds to me like a reset. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. And that's when I started thinking, is it possible for the book of Revelation to be used in a cyclical manner by man to create resets? Not all the time. I think that sometimes these resets end up not happening, but could this be why we do have so many anomalies that don't seem to make sense? We have, I'm like going through here trying to find all my photos. We have this whole idea of Tartaria and the physical millennial kingdom. And we also have, the mud flood happening and all of these other really interesting topics that I have studied. And are those being put out there to kind of start creating a self-fulfilling prophecy about the book of Revelation again? And this is something that every generation seems to think that they are the generation being spoken of in Matthew 24:34. It says in the English Standard Version, I'm going to use Matthew 24:34. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Now, I believe Jesus was speaking of his generation. There are those out there, though, who will tell you he was talking about the generation that would happen when all of the future things would happen, because they don't think that everything took place in his generation. And I happen to believe that everything did take place. But there are those who say no, he's just speaking of a future generation when those things happen. And it seems that every generation has a large group of people who thinks that they are the generation, they are the ones. And, this is something that, it feeds on our own self-centeredness. We often, we want to be the center of things. We want to be a part of something big, even if it's going to be a part of something that is going to be scary for a lot of people. And I think that the powers that be, they know this. They understand this. And so what they are doing is they are, I believe, in a very cyclical fashion, making certain things happen in order to, gain the control that they need around the world. And I mean, we see all kinds of things going on that could certainly fit right into the book of Revelation. And if you take a look at it, though, it is always something that is being artificially put in place by man, like geoengineering, like these viruses that seem to be created and then just put worldwide. And, this comment right here I wanted to share with you, because another common thing, because every generation thinks that they are the generation, they will try to put all sorts of modern meanings into the book of Revelation, because it has to fit in with their own generation. And so here is an example of that. It says, the idea that the book of Revelation can be dismissed is profoundly uninformed about its content. And I agree, the book of Revelation should not be dismissed. And that is where I do disagree with the content creator here. We are at such a point that the prophecies have been so many times over-fulfilled that it's not a fairy tale, that in the distant future, in fact, it's extremely probable that we have already entered the final 7 years. Again, I'm going to remind you, every generation thinks this, okay? I'll just cite two major glaring items. One, the Euphrates River is dried up, and I will say that the Euphrates River has actually dried up multiple times. It does happen, okay? And a prerequisite for the Battle of Armageddon. And two, Trump winning. Yes, this happened the last time too that Trump was in office. There were things going on about him being the Antichrist. Other people were saying that he was some sort of savior. And it's just, again, it's this whole apocalyptic scenario with every single generation. So it says, fits the description of Revelation 13:3 so precisely that it's likely the 7 years have begun. The seven-headed beast is a reference to the G7. And the heads of this beast are nations. So now we've got the 21st century G7 into this first century text. Now go read it. And while you're at it, look up Microsoft's patent 060606. So now we have the number of the beast, which I believe was for Nero, and they're putting this on a Microsoft patent. Then look up the mark of the beast. Keep in mind the beast is in reference to a bloated conglomerate of 7 nations, all under the same corruption. And in my opinion, the beast was Nero. And, and Rome, but it was Nero. I'm sorry, my friend, you need to challenge your beliefs because we are at the threshold of the end. And, again, this is something that has come about because all of these signs are being artificially created. And of course, you've got dispensationalism is being pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And on top of this, we have all of these people coming out saying, like the COVID vaccine was the mark of the beast, and all of these things being put into the mind of people. And that is where this whole idea of the imposed prophecies by others comes into play. I can't help but wonder, is that what we're dealing with? And again, of course you're going to have people putting all sorts of modern things in the book of Revelation because every generation seems to think that it's the one. There's actually a really interesting quote by David Chilton in The Days of Vengeance. I just dropped my pen. But he says, "The fact that many who study the prophetic writings today are interested in finding possible references to space travel and nuclear weapons, rather than in discovering God's commandments for living, is a sickening tribute to a shallow and immature faith. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy." And that's from Revelation 19:10. "To ignore Jesus in favor of atomic blasts is a perversion of Scripture, a blasphemous twisting of God's holy word." I don't know if any of you remember, I'm sure a lot of you actually probably remember the sign in the sky. I believe it was supposed to happen September 25th. Was it 2017? It was a while back, but supposedly the end was supposed to come shortly after that as well. And people were just really shaken up about this whole thing. Some people were shaken up. Some people were really excited, but like you would go through and it would just be video after video after video of what was going to happen in the sky then. And now that we have the internet at our fingertips and, even places like YouTube here, what I'm speaking to you on right now, it makes it super easy for the people who are trying to use the book of Revelation as a self-fulfilling prophecy to control us in that way and to make things go in the direction that they want it to. And let's face it, a lot of people spend way too much time online, way too much time watching videos like this. And when you have this large group of people watching video after video after video of that topic, yes, you are going to have this huge push of people believing that we are at the end. Everything is going to culminate at any time. We have the people who believe that now is the short season. They're waiting for Gog and Magog. So you hear a lot of talk about Gog and Magog right now. And I actually have a quote to read to you about Gog and Magog as well. In the book Armageddon Deception, Mike Sullivan says, "In the eschatological account given by Saadia Gaon, an attempt is made to accommodate the wars of Gog and Magog into the scheme. Interestingly enough, however, in Maimonides' scheme at the end of his great code, the Mishneh Torah, in which messianism is interpreted in largely rationalistic terms, there is no reference to the wars of Gog and Magog, only to the Messiah fighting the battles of the Lord, in order to reconquer the land of Israel, rebuild the temple, and establish God's reign on earth. Even in Orthodox Judaism, the details of these terrible events are vague, and wars of Gog and Magog do not feature at all prominently in Orthodox theology. Yet at the time, World Wars I and II did tend to be seen as the wars of Gog and Magog, as the essential prelude to the coming of the Messiah. Some of the Hasidic masters saw the struggle between Napoleon and Russia as the wars of Gog and Magog. This, of course, begs the question that if Jews and Christians could view the current events at the time of Napoleon and World War I and II as the fulfillment of Bible prophecy and the end-time battle of Gog and Magog, then they will just rework the failed system to suit our current events and seek to self-fulfill them. And as we have seen, they are working hard to fit and pressure Bibi, that's Benjamin Netanyahu, to usher in the imminent war and coming of their version of Messiah. This is something that keeps happening over and over and over again. And that is why all of these generations are seeing these signs, because they are being fashioned that way. And again, I'm going to reiterate that I do believe the book of Revelation is inspired. And I believe it was about the events of 70 AD, and that it was fulfilled then, and that everything beyond then is being used to control the populace as a cyclical, self-fulfilling prophecy. There is nothing new under the sun. And unfortunately, there are people, even who claim to be Christians, who are on board with creating these events to force the book of Revelation events to happen, and this happens in Islam. This happens with the Talmudic Zionism, and it also happens with the dispensational Zionism. So I'm going to read another passage, or another excerpt, I should say, from Armageddon Deception again. And it says, modern evangelical dispensational Zionists are on par with the end is very soon eschatology of Islam, and as we saw earlier, even some sects of Israeli Zionism. John Hagee, known as Dr. Armageddon, is very excited to fly Jews into Israel so that some can be slaughtered in a tribulation period, so as to hasten the rapture of the church. Hagee is known as Dr. Armageddon because many of his critics not only have discerned that he wants Armageddon to take place in his lifetime, but he is willing to be a very active participant in order to bring it about. At a July 19th, 2006 event in Washington, D.C., Hagee gave his prophetic scenario for Israel and the U.S. He said, "The United States must join Israel in a preemptive military strike against Iran to fulfill God's plan for both Israel and the West, a biblically prophesied end-time confrontation with Iran, which will lead to the rapture, tribulation, and the second coming." That's the end of his quote. Going on with what Mike Sullivan had to say about this, he said, John Hagee has built a foreign policy advocacy organization called Christians United for Israel, centered around this false doctrine and false interpretation of Scripture. He is pushing for a preemptive war with Iran to quicken the rapture. In 2006, while lobbying in Washington, Hagee was clear in his agenda. He said, "The United States must join Israel in a preemptive military strike." Actually, that's just what they just said. Anyway, so this was supposed to be a step in the right direction, as allegedly mapped out in the Bible, a biblically prophesied end-time confrontation, which will lead to the rapture, tribulation, and the second coming of Christ. So yes, there are people even who say that they are Christians in the Christian community, and they are trying to force this to happen. He said that he wants it to happen in his own lifetime, and he's seeing to it that he is going to at least try to help these events culminate. So that it's really something to think about. And again, I don't know if I'm right. This is just something that I had, in passing, thought about before, just mulling it over. But then watching this video here, it got me thinking about it again. And I'm going to say again, I'm not fully on board with him. In fact, I said I can't say that I'm fully on board with this. That was a terrible typo of mine. But the hyperliteral translation of Revelation by premillennial Zionists to push for World War III is another example of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that is where I'm at with this topic right now. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work and would like to support my page, I will leave a link in the description for my channel membership, or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.